Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the SEAFA Spotlight podcast. I'm your host and the SEAFA president, Andres Sandate. I'm delighted today to be joined by three guests to talk about a really exciting and new winner of our hedge fund competition that we partner with at SEAFA with Georgia State University. So I'm joined today by Associate Professor Scott Murray from Georgia State University, and the winners from the University of West Florida of the 2024 Georgia State Hedge Fund Competition, Ada Turemis and Aaron Korel. So welcome, everybody, to the SEAFA Spotlight podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Hope I got all those names correctly and titles. So I'm going to come to you, Scott, first. I reached out to you because we wanted to talk about the hedge fund competition that Georgia State University's J. Mack Robinson College of Business and SEAFA have partnered on. It's really something that you've spearheaded and are the organizer of. And I thought it'd be a great conversation to not only allow you to tell the story of the hedge fund competition and give more background, which I think is fantastic for students around the world, but also for the students to hear later in the conversation for Aaron and his teammate at MKT, that's the team, Ada, to talk about their Bullwhip Strategy, which was judged to be the winner of a $10,000 cash prize. So, Scott, I'm going to start with you. You're an associate professor of finance. You have a hedge fund background. You study empirical pricing. I read your CV, and so tell us about the hedge fund competition. Tell us about what this is and how it got started.
So I'll start with how it got started. It started about, I think this is our 8th year doing it in its current version, in its current form. It started, I guess, two of my colleagues, my department chair, so my boss, and Vikas Agrawal, who's he's got a huge title. I can't remember it, but he's a professor here. He's also a SEAFA board member. They approached me about restarting something that had been run in a form that I'm not even sure exactly what the previous form of it looked like, but restarting this competition where basically we have students. I think the previous version was a very regional, very local thing where we had students from different universities come together and pitch investment ideas. So that's how it started. We kind of re-envisioned the whole thing. So we didn't really take much from the old version of it. But basically the way it works is we have students from universities now all around the world. It started out, first few years, it was really kind of Southeast United States. And then we, kind of expanded our marketing. Right now we've had teams from 4 continents, the US, Europe, Asia, and Africa participate. Wow. So student teams submit these proposals for hedge fund investment strategies to the competition. And we take in the submissions and we randomly assign them to reviewers. So these reviewers are basically investment management industry professionals. So with a lot of them have a tremendous amount of experience. We've got firm founders, we've got portfolio managements and chief investment officers, managing directors, very, very qualified people. We get about 6 pairs of eyes usually on each submission. And the submissions are evaluated by these professionals. This year we had 42 different professionals look at the submissions. So I think they each reviewed 3 or 4 of them. And then we tally up the results and we invite the 5 best teams to the final competition, which we hold every year at Georgia State University at our Buckhead campus. And at the final competition, basically the students have 8 minutes to present their proposals, and they get then grilled by a panel of judges for about 7 minutes, maybe a little more.
I see them smile. I see them smiling. So I'm thinking the grilling was intense. I wasn't able to be at this year's version of the event, but I have in the past. And I think there's some sweaty palms before they get up on stage, because let's be honest, I mean, for some of these students, not to cut you off, Scott, but they may have career aspirations. A big part of this is the networking, meeting professionals. It's not just writing a paper or presenting an investment strategy. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's, you hit the nail on the head. And this is, I mean, I encourage the judges to turn up the heat. This is something you've got to learn how to handle, right?
Yeah.
So the judges grill them, and then when it's all over, the judges basically take however long they need to deliberate and determine the top prize winners. And obviously this year, Anna and Aaron came away with the top prize for their Bullwhip strategy. So, and I think the big objective, as you said, Andres, there's two big objectives. One is to provide a professional opportunity for the students. The other one is to really prepare the students and give them a first crack at doing this while they're still in school, because this is not something that is really taught, how to develop an investment strategy and think of all the things, all the implementation considerations, all the risk management considerations, capital considerations. These are not things that are really taught and executed in the classroom. And I really feel that students who, even if they don't win, who come through the competition and get a first crack at this before they go out into the labor market, they're going to have a huge advantage over people who have never encountered these concepts and never dealt with them and grappled with them. So from an educator's point of view, that's kind of the purpose of the competition. And I should say SEAFA has been a fantastic partner in this all along since I've been doing it for the past 8 years, and I believe long before that. So thank you very much to SEAFA.
Yeah, and credit to all the generous benefactors and donations and sponsorship that many companies across the SEAFA, call it community, from some of the very hedge fund managers that are asked to be judges, numerous professional service firms. So it really is a really cool rallying point for the industry, particularly, as hedge funds, let's be real, like in the last 10 years, 15 years, like they were this mysterious, unique, differentiated thing. And then we saw what happened over the last 10 years with all these other asset classes. So this is a really great way to put a positive light on an asset class that is still huge, very meaningful, very important, gets a lot of attention from academia, increasingly institutional investors recognizing hedge funds serve a purpose, to diversify portfolios, manage downside, provide different things that we're going to dive into from an investment perspective, and also generating alpha. So thanks for that introduction, Scott. I do want to go to the two winners, though, and we want to dive in and give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. So the University of West Florida produced this year's winners, and we are delighted to have them here on the SEAFA Spotlight podcast for the first time. So Ada and Aaron, I want to allow each of you to introduce yourselves. Congratulations again for winning the $10,000 first prize. I know the money is great, but I'm sure the experience also of preparing, refining the proposal and the presentation, and then going through the actual judges live in Atlanta. There was probably a lot of great takeaways, but I want to allow you to first introduce yourself. So we'll start with you. Go ahead, Ada.
Okay, so I am an MBA finance student at University of West Florida, and I'm towards the end of my study now. I'm graduating in August, actually.
Okay.
I have a bachelor's degree in art history from Syracuse University, so I am a very unconventional business finance student. And I had to do a lot of catching up before I did my MBA. So I did a year of foundation classes, stats, econ, accounting. And I started my MBA not really knowing what I wanted to do. And I'm coming out of it completely in love with finance and wanting to, ideally go into maybe a hedge fund or equity research, something like that. So I have a kind of unconventional background and journey in MBA program.
Well, before we go to Aaron, I have to say, you might fit right in the hedge fund industry, just having the art background, because then you could advise the general partner on his or her art collection with all the management fees and the carry, right, that they generate. I say that tongue in cheek,
Yeah.
but lot to unpack there. I love
Yeah.
the unconventional background, and I think that this experience, combined with some of the things that I'm sure you studied in undergrad and probably did before the MBA, greatly informed a lot of the things that contributed to your and Aaron's success. Aaron, let's go to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I'm prior military. I served in the Army for 6 years.
Well, thank you.
Yep. So after I finished up my contract, decided I wanted to try to go into the finance world. So right now I'm majoring in finance with a minor in accounting. I'm coming into my senior year, and hopefully somewhat similar to Ada, maybe equity research, hedge fund, investment analyst. That's what I'm looking to do right now.
That's great. Well, I can't think of a more fitting way to do this conversation, Scott, because what diverse backgrounds we have here, right? We have somebody from from the the art world, like the liberal arts major who goes into finance. Otto, I can't wait to ask more about that. And then Aaron, somebody who served to our country and came from military and is now pursuing his studies at the University of West Florida in business. I got to ask though, how did you meet?
We met in the investment program. So we have an Argo investment fund program ran by our faculty advisor, Dr. Ma. So I was involved in that because I did the CFA challenge, research challenge last year. So through that, I was involved, and I know that Aaron was involved in the bond fund management side of it. So that's how we met. And I knew that he was trading options in his free time. So I thought, okay, he knows options, and I need to kind of ask him questions. And it started just as like me asking questions and picking his brains. And then when I came with the idea, he was the first one that I went to. I'm like, okay, I have this idea. I need your help.
Aaron, is that your recollection of how this all came to be?
Yeah, it's pretty accurate. Yep.
I love it. I love it. And you must be the person that was mysteriously profiled in that Wall Street Journal article about how options activity amongst retail investors has really gone through the roof.
I read that article. Yeah. Absolutely me. Spot on.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. Scott, I want to come back to you real quick before we dive into the Bullwhip strategy that the team was successful with in the strategy. What is the profile of the student teams that are submitting proposals, and kind of can you talk about how you're promoting the competition to your colleagues and others in the academic world to get the word out about the competition?
So I'd say there isn't really a profile that defines kind of this type of students we see. We see undergraduates, we see master's students, we see PhD teams of PhD students. So we really get students from all levels.
Which is great, by the way, because it's not limited, it sounds like, to just students that are at specific schools. Let's be real. When you talk about our industry of alternatives, a lot of times the quote unquote non-target schools, which I hate that term, it's like they're just totally overlooked, right? And if you don't have a master's from a Ivy League school, like you're totally overlooked. So you're telling us that the competition allows students from any part of the world and
any university in the whole world.
Okay. Any type of major?
Any type of major, and anybody who wants to participate. We are happy to have you. We are. Wow. And something that I would say, you brought up this issue with, the universities that may get special treatment. Something we take very seriously here is we do not let anybody know. I'm literally one of 3 or 4 people in the whole world that know what universities the finalists come from until the winners have been determined.
And why do you do that?
And you'll. Well, to maintain anonymity, because let's be real, the judges are humans. They all have alma maters. But the big reason is to make sure there's no bias, no favoritism towards schools with different reputations, schools with different alumni, schools of, any one school over another, to make sure it's purely based on, the proposal the students submit and then their presentation.
Yeah, it's like a merit-based competition, which is much like finance, right? Like the best ideas should float to the top.
And I believe, finance is a field where that probably holds much more than in other fields. But
the opportunities, but the opportunities don't always equal out, right? In terms of like there could be knowledge and expertise and ambition, but if you don't have the alumni networks, or you don't have access to the internship programs, you don't have access to the student investment teams and clubs, it just means it's not impossible to get maybe where you want to go. If it's a hedge fund or a private equity firm, it just means you're going to have to work a little bit differently, maybe potentially a little bit harder.
Absolutely. And I think, but I do think this competition gives, students from any university, anywhere in the world, any major, any, area of interest, the opportunity to compete on a level playing field and to showcase their talents. And that's something that I, really enjoy about the competition. And we've seen winners. We've seen undergraduates win. Here we have a team that's one graduate student, one undergraduate student. So it's fantastic that you guys met up across programs. We don't, most of our teams are either all undergrads, all master's students. But we have had teams like this in the past. But, so we get students from, like I said, all over the world. We've had winners from all over the world. So I think the anonymity is an important thing.
I think
you'll
it's
see
great.
if you look at the list of winners, it's not, that list of schools that you would come up with. It's, we've identified tremendously talented people from universities all over the place.
Yeah, that can do the research and do the work. So let's talk a little bit about the actual competition and what the teams are submitting. So Ada and Aaron, when you got the, I guess when you saw and first learned of the competition and decided individually, maybe at that point, like, hey, I want to do this. I want to participate. Like, there's a time commitment, there's research, you've got a course load, all these other things. Like, I want to start with you, Aaron. What was the first thing that kind of came to mind before you even sought out a partner or teammate when you read about the competition?
Well, to be honest, we weren't even sure if we were going to do the competition to start with.
Okay.
We didn't know if the idea was even doable. We didn't know, we couldn't find any literature on it. We couldn't find, no one had a strategy like this that we could find on the internet. We weren't even sure, so we were kind of doubting, like, oh, like, do we do it? Do we not? Like, are we going to compete? Who knows?
And what was that strategy it sounds like you maybe had an idea before that you wanted to sort of flush out and figure out, is this something we could submit?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And Ada, how did that idea go from, we can't find a lot of maybe supportive research, or is this going to fit the competition, to, no, we're going to submit and we're going to go forward and actually write this paper, which is fantastic?
Yeah, so actually it started as more like a research kind of attempt, really, because I've done research with another faculty member at University of West Florida. So I was kind of in the realm and the mindset of academic research, and I wanted to really produce another paper before I graduated. So the priority for me, and I think for Aaron, when I told him to, was research. So we instead of thinking like, oh, we should do this competition and we should do it and submit it by this date, so let's come up with an idea. It was other way around. We had an idea.
It was research first. Yeah.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
So we had an idea, and I heard about this competition through our faculty advisor, who has had, I believe, groups before who he submitted with, but never made it to the finals. So he said, like, this is going on and timing can actually work. Like, let me just send you the website for it and look at it. And if you think, you can turn this research attempt into a more applicable idea, you can do it. And, Aaron, I'm sure he put full confidence in Aaron, saying that he's a great student, and I think you guys would work well together. So that's kind of how it all came together. And then it was a lot of, again, then the doubting came. Like, how can we take this big kind of research idea that we had? Supply chain demand shocks, can they affect the stock returns of these companies? To, if we were to make an investment this way, how do we think about risk, and how do we think about actually implementing it? And then came to more detailed model kind of work.
Yeah, I'm sure so much goes into building the actual idea from a research, more academic angle to now sort of commercializing it, putting it into maybe potentially like an investment presentation to a panel of judges, right? So let's talk about the very idea itself. The Bullwhip Strategy is the title of your paper. MKT is the name of your team. Give us some background, Ada. Like, it sounds like this started with some research you are already in the process of doing. So maybe you could share with the listeners a little bit about the idea and the research. You talked about supply chain demand shocks ultimately affecting stock prices.
Yes. So I pretty much came up to the supply chain data on Bloomberg Terminal when I was getting certified for another class that I was taking. So I had a lot of time in my hand. I would just, log in to Bloomberg Terminal and just look around, snoop around. And I came up with I came to the supply chain function, and I saw this whole universe. I don't know if I'm sure you've seen that function where it's a whole chain of companies that are linked to each other. And I thought this information is very, very valuable, and I've never seen it anywhere before. Like, we couldn't even find anything on like the public filings of these companies. Like, no one really maps it out like that. And I thought, clearly these companies are linked to each other. And okay, I understand that, supply chain and operations are very much, impacted by how these companies are connected. But what about the stock prices? Like, what happens if something goes wrong with one company and the stock price tanks? There's no way that the other company is not going to get affected by that. So the idea was very simple and like came from a place of curiosity. And I think I'm going to go on a little tangent here, but being a liberal arts student and coming from humanities and, writing a lot of research papers, just pondering about, various tangents, as I said, like, I just like couldn't help but to be curious about this. So that's how it started. Then moving into the research, we found that there was a lot of supply chain research about this, which is called the bullwhip effect. I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with that. It's a very well-known kind of supply chain operations idea. But we were trying to figure out how that applied in like the financial markets, and we could not find anything. So there we said, okay, maybe there's something here. It was a lot of doubting at that stage as well, by the way, because we're like, how did anyone not write about this? Like, there's no way that this is not a thing. Like, this must be a thing. And a lot of people are probably making a lot of money from this, but there's nothing on the kind of empirical research or, academic research side about this. So the idea itself is, I'm going to go back to your question from my tangent. The supply chain phenomenon known as bullwhip effect pretty much is an upstream shock in any supply chain, right? Like coming from the retailer towards the raw material supplier. So like, let's say 10% change in demand in the retailer side will bullwhip into like, let's say 100% in the raw material supplier. So basically every single supplier, we call these echelons in our paper, every echelon kind of adds their own forecasting error onto each other, and that kind of accumulates and multiplies. That's how the accumulation occurs. So this is very well documented in academia, and we could not really figure out like how do we approach this in a financial way. So we came up with our own error hypothesis, and this is kind of to take this supply chain phenomenon and express this in how does the stock return accumulate upstream. So error accumulate upstream. So Aaron, if I'm forgetting something, please interrupt me and make your additions. So yeah, the whole idea is that there are supply chain interruptions happening every day. There is demand shocks happening every day, most of them due to information asymmetry. So a lot of the echelon suppliers don't want to share the specific details of how they supply their products, who they sell to, and the way they forecast demand. So every echelon makes their own decision based on their most immediate echelon supplier or retailer. So basically the stock price acts in a similar way we found in our model. So there is a bullwhip effect of this stock return. On the other hand, we also used a reverse bullwhip model to hedge this strategy. So that was I feel like the most out of the box creative moment that we had in the paper, that instead of, let's say, hedging it with a bond fund decision, we pretty much reverse what we did and hedge it that way, because that's like the worst thing that can happen in that scenario is the opposite happening. It's not even that it doesn't happen. If it doesn't happen, nothing happens. Like our no harm zero alpha. But if we reverse it, then at least we're ready to handle what happens if everything goes completely flip.
Yeah, fantastic. Aaron, our options guru, how did you take the idea that was terrifically explained by Ada and actually turn that into together? Clearly you did that together. How did you turn that into an actual investment idea? Like what were the commercial aspects? Which stocks or which securities or assets did you decide to sort of hone in on here in your actual paper, in your strategy?
So in Bloomberg, there's thousands of data points on that supply chain. So really the biggest thing for us was building out those echelons. So initially we started with, we pick a base firm, any S&P 500 company, and then from there, largest supplier, largest customer. So that builds us a 3 echelon. So this is where the real fun comes in, is then building out into a 7 echelon. So you take the largest supplier of the base firm, then you look for their largest supplier, and you just go up and down the whole chain until you have an entire 7 echelon built out. So really from there, so our criteria was pretty much S&P 500, just because it's more liquid, easier to trade.
Sure. More data, more liquid. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So from there, once we had our 7 echelon, so we tried using like historical data to see if it had the effect. We didn't really like it because it didn't really give us the results that we were looking for. So my background in options, we decided to look into like implied volatility. So because it's more forward looking, and once we started using IV, we saw that it started to get priced in, and that it actually does happen with the stock prices. So that was one thing that we were really happy to start using. Implied volatility.
Scott, I want to ask you. You've seen so many ideas, I'm sure, now over the course of let's call it reinventing, thinking the competition. What stands out, not only about this particular strategy, but others that have had success in years past, in terms of taking, whether it's a research concept like the Bullwhip strategy, which is well researched, it's a well-known phenomenon, but then converting it and turning it into an actual investment idea that like professionals, practitioners can listen to for 8 minutes and then kind of understand, because they don't have a lot of time, right, to digest these strategies. But what are the hallmarks of some of the teams, this one and others, that have stood out about how they go about their research process, their writing, and then their presenting?
Well, I think the most important thing is a level of creativity. The strategies have to have something novel. It's got to go beyond what you can just read and replicate in academic research or the standard things that you can read in a textbook. So I think, and this strategy, I think, stood out along that dimension. I think the last thing Aaron mentioned, and I think one of the judges actually commented on this, it only got like a 3-second snippet here, but their use of implied vols instead of any other sort of historical vol-based metric or historical return-based metric to generate their forecast, what was a critical insight that they brought, and that I didn't realize that this was kind of crucial to their outcome, but I think this was something that the judges commented on was very important. Very generally, beyond creativity, I think, basically the successful proposals demonstrate the ability to take an economic thesis. Okay, in this case, it's essentially that there was a security market pricing effect arising from the well-known bullwhip effect. Mm-hmm. That was the essential thesis that they took, and then translate that into an actual investment strategy. So it's not clear immediately from that what securities you buy. Do you trade options? Do you trade bonds? Do you trade stocks? What do you trade from that? And so taking that, an investment thesis or an economic thesis, and turning it into kind of an investment strategy is a big challenge.
Sure.
The successful teams, I mean, to have the knowledge of how to do that and to spend the time and figure out how to do that as an undergraduate student or as a graduate student is something that very few people can do. And then obviously beyond that, once you've got, a concept of how to actually create this, to go and collect the data and to write code to do a simulation and to do all of this. I mean, this is something I tell when we have students at Georgia State who try to take this on, a very important thing that I always tell them, a challenge that I give them with any strategy is, well, what do you think you know that the market doesn't know? It's one thing to make a forecast. It's another thing to make a forecast that consistently beats what all these other, market participants are forecasting. So I think another big element is the ability to produce knowledge or information that the rest of the market does not have. And the teams that's been a consistent theme throughout the winners, at least in the past several years. So, and then, just I think, like I said, the raw skills to be able to collect the data, write the code to do a simulation, understand what the risk metrics are, the correct risk metrics, understand how to, actually simulate trading. These are all things that go into a successful proposal. And yeah, so I think, this team in particular was really, did very well on all those dimensions.
Yeah, let's break down. I want to give Ada and Aaron a chance to kind of go back and relive the last. I don't know how long this process took you from. We're sitting at mid-May today. The academic school year is pretty much wrapped up. The competition wrapped up in the spring, a month or so ago. I want you to go back and maybe talk about what Scott mentioned, which is, taking an idea and then you've got to build it up into something that is investable. And at a hedge fund, you're going to have, depending on its size, you're going to have, a research function. You're going to have a portfolio management. You're going to have risk management. You're going to have trading. You're going to have sometimes tech and quant and engineering. And then you have executive leadership and all these other departments. This is two of you having to do all these things that Scott mentioned. So I wanted to ask you from a team concept, Ada and Aaron, how did you go about breaking down all the things that Scott mentioned, building code, collecting data, sensitizing it, putting the paper together? How did you guys go about doing that? Maybe you can start, Ada.
Yeah. So I was very interested in the conceptual kind of framework of this idea. So for me, it was a lot of literature review. I was already very much knees deep into that. So kind of creating a story, what causes what, and like the bigger idea, bigger story, which I think helped us a lot when we were preparing our presentation. So I was very, very interested in the framework, and for the nitty-gritty technical data stuff, I had to ask Aaron a lot of stuff, and like he was spearheading that, and I learned a lot from him and in my own time. Like I think I should say, like, it took us very long because the only way we could handle this was with time, because I'm not a pro programmer. I know a little sauce because I did previous academic research, which is, if you ask any information, like any coder, if you say sauce, they're going to be like, oh wow, like you really did that on sauce, like, it wasn't R or it wasn't that, because again, I did academic research, and my the faculty members I work with, they use sauce, so that's how I learned. So I had a little bit of like a little bit of kind of understanding of how to collect data and how to interpret it, but the technical aspect of this project was heavily on Aaron, and he can tell you a little bit about like how he kind of like had very brilliant ideas about how we can collect this data out of Bloomberg, which was it just took us so long. I mean, I think the thing here I can say to anyone who wants to produce like a very creative or interesting interdisciplinary research is like to give yourself time, because we over a year we've been like, I think we started in the beginning of 2023. Am I right, Aaron? Yeah. So in the spring semester of 2023 is like when we started playing with the idea, and our schools, like we almost all of us have summer classes, so we didn't take like a summer break, so we were already like in the school taking classes, so we were working through it over the summer and all that. So we just gave ourselves a lot of time and a lot of opportunities to learn what we don't know. So our faculty advisor, Dr. Ma, he always says, like, those are the things you can learn. There are things you can learn, like programming, like interpreting data and creating a model. And it's a lot of trial and error, and sometimes looking on YouTube and I don't know,
Sure.
Quora, and like getting all the support that you can get from the people around you. Obviously for us, it was also our faculty advisor who showed us the way in some aspects and gave us guidance. Other professors in our university, we had to ask like how does one get to this point, that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of support, a lot of time, and a lot of just working at it and all the things that you can learn.
Amazing. Scott, I'm sitting here listening as a mid-40s guy with 3 kids, and I'm like, man, I got to go back and do college again. I don't think I took advantage of all the horsepower and brain power at these universities. It's just fascinating. So Aaron, spotlight on you here for a minute, talking about the technical aspects, to take nothing away from Ada's contributions, but she clearly has a grasp of the theoretical side and sort of where the idea she wanted to kind of go with. She was knees deep in the research, as she mentioned already, but needed to sort of bring this together in terms of the technical aspects. And so I want to ask you, how did you do that?
Like going back to ATA, it took a lot of time.
Yeah.
Thankfully, our university does have access to Bloomberg. Like she said, we have a great faculty advisor. We were always on the terminal, and really, one of the hardest parts was downloading all the data. Like, so Bloomberg will only let you download so much data at a time, or like per every month. So we kind of gamed the system a little bit. We would wait till the end of the month, download as much data as we could, and then once that month passed, we were able to work with the data, and then wait till the end of the month again, download the data again. So
I'm sure they'll change that after they see and hear this. And all these universities will get a bill for a better subscription access. But Bloomberg is not a sponsor. But it sounds like that I should call them and get them involved in the competition, because clearly having access to data, as you pronounce it, is a critical piece of this. And maybe that is a source, Scott, for us to pursue, is who can help these students access the data that they need in order to have the robust research to support a creative idea, right? So Aaron, I cut you off, but so it took a lot of time to collect the data that you needed. Once you have it all, then kind of what's the next process in testing and formulating the investment idea?
A lot of trial and error, a lot of, okay, well, let's see if this works. Okay, if that doesn't work, then let's try this metric. If that metric doesn't work, okay, well, what was the best result that we got from that previous one? It's a lot of trial and error, a lot of tweaking this, changing that. Okay, that doesn't work. Well, what about 1.5? Well, what if we do lower than 1.5? A lot of changing data, not changing data, but a lot of like changing the metrics that goes into it. That was.
And where did I want to ask, where did that insight come from? Because like Scott, you highlighted it, that we should probably go back to that and say that was a pivot, right? That were a pivotal piece of the research process when you sort of decided to start using, was it the empirical data that was kind of a unique insight here to the strategy? Aaron? Yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry. What?
Yeah, Scott mentioned one of the aspects of this strategy that the judges really picked up on and highlighted when they recognized, this is different. Can you go back and explain, like, when did that happen in the overall, year and a half process that you guys worked on the Bullwhip strategy?
So it was probably about a few months before we turned in, before we entered the paper for the competition.
Yeah.
Because we were still having trouble with that, the historical data. So that's when we switched over to the implied volatility and started using that.
Yeah.
And that's
the implied volatility. There you go.
Yeah, the pieces of the puzzle started coming together. Like, oh, okay, like this actually works. Like this is, we can do this.
Yeah. And I think then, I'm so sorry, but I want to
no, go ahead.
Another thing that, like, in the data process that Aaron didn't really mention that much, the supply chain data on Bloomberg is 3 echelon. So only 3 companies are connected. So a lot of the programming and data mining process was taking those 3 echelon chains and making them into 7 echelon. And that was obviously a puzzle. And the reason why we did 7 is that is how the supply chain literature approaches the supply chain. So, like taking the 3 into 7, I think that took us a lot of time. Like, I think, the writing the code for that, I think took like maybe a month, maybe a little over a month, something like that, just to kind of get like a very clean looking, working 7 echelon pairs from the 3.
Yeah. So we have now the competition. It's held in Atlanta, Scott. You have been able to include and get participation from senior investment professionals, men and women from across the investment industry throughout Atlanta. And then there's a number of judges, ultimately, who come to the competition, physically sit in the executive conference room, which is a beautiful facility that the College of Business has. And then you invite how many teams each year, and then take us through the actual day of the competition itself. What are you telling the students? You mentioned they get eight or 10 minutes to present. There's questions from the judges. Set the scene for us here.
Okay, so the students, I mean, my day starts early. I get there and set up, but you don't want to hear about that.
Yeah.
So the students come in, I give them the opportunity to come in a while before the competition starts, just to show them the space, show them where they'll be presenting, where the clock is, where to the countdown clock, so they don't run out of time, etc. Get them a little comfortable. We give them a little room to go in and sit and get nervous or whatever they
their
need
green
to
room. Yeah, it's their green room. Yeah. Before they come on stage. And then who's invited to the actual competition? Like, it's not just judges and students presenting, I would assume, right?
Well, certainly the whole SEAFA membership is invited. Faculty members at Georgia State and other universities are invited. And we get, a pretty good turnout from basically practitioners. I assume they're mostly SEAFA members.
Yeah. We definitely supported out to the SEAFA membership. I know that in years past, I've met academics that are advisors to the student team. Sometimes they will travel in with the teams. And then what's amazing is you get teams that come in from all over the world. In this case, University of West Florida. But who were the finalists this year? Do you recall which teams?
Yeah, so we had a team. So unfortunately, one team couldn't make it. We had a team from University of St. Gallen in Switzerland.
Okay.
They didn't actually make it. They had a series of commitments. The University of York in the UK. So they did make it. Those two universities have placed teams pretty consistently in the top 5.
That's amazing. So you had students come over from England to Atlanta for the competition. I mean, that's my soundbite.
I mean, it's fantastic, and they keep coming back. The great thing is,
very
it's
cool.
not a one and done. They clearly enjoy the experience and get value out of it. They keep coming back, so it's great for them. University of West Florida, obviously, they're not too far from us. I think you guys drove, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Who else? Utah State University. Was another finalist, and University of South Carolina.
Wow.
So they're not too far from us either. So I guess we had 2 driving teams and 1 across the pond, and and we have had teams from Asia come in.
Interesting. So I want to in the last couple of minutes, we'll do a relatively light finish here because you've already been through the pressure cooker. But maybe I'll start with you, Aaron, first here as we wrap up. Set the scene for students that are listening or will listen to this, because again, I think the clear takeaway for me from a research and writing, data collection, testing, retesting, like programming, all of that, they can listen to the podcast. But what I would love for you to do is help them understand, like, there are a lot of people, there's scientific data that says this. Giving a public presentation is terrifying for many people, and in front of a room full of people you don't know. So maybe you can put people at ease, or maybe not. I don't know. But I would love for you to take the students through kind of that day and the actual presentation and what it felt like, at the end when you guys were awarded. You start, Aaron.
Yeah. Okay. So really biggest takeaway is don't be nervous. Going into it, I was concerned. Like, I wanted to win. But really just not being nervous. We put the hours in, we did the work. Everyone's here to hear the proposal. So I mean, it's just go in there with the good frame of mind. Be excited to share your idea with other people who want to hear it. Really, that was one of the big takeaways for me. Besides,
you sound like you were just calm, cool, and collected. Like, do you attribute that to like your military background? I mean, I'm sure you went through a lot of training there, and I can't even imagine the different scenarios. Not to mention the teamwork aspect, but what do you attribute that being calm and cool and collected under pressure?
Definitely the teamwork and support. Otto was an amazing teammate. Through it all, we supported each other, even right before the presentation, just giving each other a pep talk. Like, we got this, we can do it.
Awesome. I love it.
That definitely was a huge factor, I think.
Well, you can definitely tell there's chemistry. Ada, I'm going to let you have the final word here
Yeah.
on the SEAFA Spotlight podcast before we wrap up. Take us
Yeah.
through what this was like for you as far as the experience at the competition itself.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I agree with Aaron. It's so important to have a supportive team. We were both in the same wavelength as to how much work we wanted to put in, how much detail we want to get in, how much prep we wanted to do. It was a lot of preparation. I think like we spent a lot of time practicing our presentation and perfecting it. Like we spent almost all of the time between the when we found out we were finalists to the actual presentation. It was just solely focused on how are we going to take this very complicated idea and make it into a 8-minute presentation that everybody can understand, grasp, and like how do we highlight the most important, most creative parts of our paper. And I have a upper hand in this, I'm going to say, because in my previous life, before my MBA life, I worked in marketing agencies, creative agencies, and I pitched for a living. I pretty much was giving 2, 3, 4 pitches every week, and I was putting a lot of slide decks together. So I had a lot of experience putting presentations together, making very complicated things easy and fast, like easy for people to understand at once, without minimizing the detail that we put in that process. I think the actual presentation day was obviously very nerve-wracking. I'm not gonna lie, it was very nerve-wracking. But once I was on that stage, I think the thing that I was really reminding myself is that the people are in this room are my colleagues. They're not professors. They're not here to grade me, like give me a bad grade. They're just here to understand my ideas. So I think seeing the judges as colleagues really helped me, because when they were asking a question, instead of being defensive or like needing to defend my idea, it was almost like a conversation we were having about an idea that we had. And I would definitely encourage all the future students who are applying to think of this presentation as a conversation with your colleagues. They're not your professors. They're not here to fail you, anything like that. So keeping an open mind in that way was very, very important. Having a great teammate is very important. At the end of the day, we spent so much time not only preparing, but we traveled to Atlanta together. We drove 6 hours there.
Yeah.
And we were sitting in traffic, and like we had to just like talk and like feel comfortable in each other's presence. Even that part was like, I feel like really helped us have a good team and be a team on the stage and presentation and all that.
Oh, all that comes out. I mean, if you can't ride an elevator 4 floors with somebody, you can't ride in a car for 6 hours to Atlanta.
Yeah.
So clearly, I mean, there was so many good nuggets in what you shared, Aaron and Ada there. Scott, I'd be remiss if I didn't give you the opportunity to finish here on the SEAFA Spotlight. It's just been fascinating to hear more about the competition. I have a couple of thoughts. Number one, before you get the final marks, I think we need to videotape this competition in the future. I think it would be amazing to have the video, not only for the students, but also for the, selfishly for the SEAFA community to be able to go back and listen and watch. And then just also for the global audience of folks that might want to, maybe they're a freshman or sophomore in undergrad. Maybe they're just starting their path down the financial academic world and kind of see themselves as really wanting to dive in. And what a fantastic opportunity for them to get some sort of row seat to how it's done and what goes into it. Just some ideas, just some thoughts. And we're also going to call Bloomberg, by the way, and we're going to, given we plugged them, we're going to ask them to sponsor us. But Scott, maybe you can wrap us up. Where do you want to take the competition? What's been the most professionally gratifying aspect of doing this? And then, a third question, because I always ask 2 and then a third. So, where do you want to take it? What's been the most gratifying? And, I'd say the third thing is, what have you heard from some of the alums? If 1 or 2 stories comes to mind from those that have participated in the past.
Well, so where do I want? I think that was your second
Yeah.
question, right?
No, first one. Where do you want to take the competition?
Okay. So where do I want to
Yeah.
take it? I mean, hopefully we'll keep going as we are. I think we want to expand participation.
Yeah.
Is a big thing. I think it would be great to add a little more of a career networking or career path component to it.
Okay.
But we've, and I think we've had tremendous support from all the sponsors, from SEAFA, and I'm sure that'll continue. So I think we'll be able to get those things done. From the most gratifying, I think, from my point of view, is just seeing the students develop. Seeing exactly, what you guys just described in terms of the way you worked and you figured out how to solve these problems. You came together, you were a team, you executed the functions that a hedge fund needs to execute. You had fantastic division of labor. Okay, you are literally the how I would draw up a team. And I think this comes through. You have different talents. And they were all put to use. And firms, hedge funds, corporations, any type of firm needs all of this. So to see you put that to use before you go out into the labor force, and now to be able to talk about that when you go do interviews, I think, I can't wait to see where you guys are 10 years from now. And, so that's something coming up. We're inching towards our 10 year. And I have kind of some thoughts in mind about kind of connecting with some of the early winners at the 10 year and seeing where they are. And I can tell you, I've done some, preliminary investigation, and people are doing pretty well.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Well, you're clearly part of a network now. And I think SEAFA can continue to lean in, Scott, to your point about the professional network. I would hope the folks that watch this, and if you shared this link, with a recruiter or somebody, that can be influential for an internship, Ada and Aaron, that they would listen to this and they would read the paper and the strategy and really connect the dots and see the passion, hear from you, the enthusiasm, clearly understand the character and the makeup of somebody that I would think they would really want to have on their team. So I think SEAFA can step in and lean in more, Scott. And I think we've got generous supporters, and I would be remiss if I didn't. I'm looking at my other screen because what I want to do is I want to recognize the judges. So I'm going to put links to the competition, to the paper, with your permission, your all's LinkedIn profile and such on the SEAFA Spotlight podcast, so people can reach out. But the judges for this year's competition, and this is in particular order, but this is from the Georgia State website. Greg Jacobs, partner, chief operating officer at Bay Point Advisors, which is a local Atlanta alternative asset manager. Stephanie Lang, who's a chartered financial analyst, who's a principal and chief investment officer of Hamrickberg, which is a $10-15 billion wealth advisor located in Atlanta, founded in 1989. Clay McDaniel, who's a partner, chief investment officer of private markets at Waverly Advisors, located in Atlanta. Brandon Robinson, who's a quant developer at Masters Capital Management, which is a longtime hedge fund located in Atlanta, started by Mike Masters, which has been a generous donation, benefactor, and sponsor of the competition and also of SEAFA for many years. Jeff Vale, who's a partner and chief investment officer at Infinity Capital Partners, which is an alternative asset manager in Atlanta. And Jeff is also a SEAFA board member. JP Vincent, who's an executive director at Merrick's Prime Services, which is a prime brokerage firm, critical piece of the hedge fund infrastructure for anybody that's out there as a hedge fund. And then the sponsors, our platinum sponsors for the competition were Warren Averett, CPAs and Advisors, Masters Capital Management, Georgia State University, the Center for Economic Analysis of Risk, CEAR, and then gold sponsors were Infinity Funds, Trident Trust, Bay Point Advisors, and then additional sponsors this year were Hamrickberg, Harney's, Waverly Advisors, and Merrick's Prime Services. So I thought it was important that we recognize those folks who donated $20,000 in scholarships were awarded this year. 10,000 for the winner, 5,000 for second, I believe, and then were there 2 additional prizes, Scott?
Yeah. So well, let me first correct. So this year, unfortunately, Jeff Vale was unavailable.
Oh, he wasn't.
To judge.
Okay.
So John Champagne from Infinity stepped in for him.
Oh, okay, great.
Jeff has been a judge every other year.
Yeah.
So, but yes, there's $20,000 in prize money, 10 for the first place, 5 for the second place, 3 for the third place team. And usually we have 2 finalists and we give them each $1,000 per team. This year, one of the finalists can make it. So the last finalist got the full 2,000 that was left over.
Wow. Well, I would love to ask Ada and Aaron what they're doing with all that cash that they won, but I'm sure that, you know, given you're in school, a lot of expenses, I know is put to good use. So this has been a really fun conversation. I appreciate you taking the time, Scott, to get the students from the University of West Florida's winning team organized today to talk on the SEAFA Spotlight podcast. Ada, Aaron, congratulations. I look forward to providing your winning strategy on the SEAFA Spotlight on the SEAFA website to share with our community, but also many others who I think would find this conversation really interesting. And I look forward to us tracking all the success and progress. Please stay in touch and please come back. I'm sure Scott's got big plans for the 10-year anniversary. But with that, we'll sign off. Congratulations, and I hope everybody has a great summer ahead.
Thank you.
Thanks
so much, Andres.
Thank you all.